So, hello, I'm Adam Dubbin. I'm here with Safe Florida Waters Now, and this is Florida Waters Weekly. So, first thing I want to talk about this week is this is kind of a big deal. After a lot of work by Bull Sugar, Everglades Trust, and a lot of us, we were able to get the Senate to introduce Senate Bill 10. So the first thing on my agenda here, you'll see that it's Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades. I have a bunch of articles here in relation to what we did this week in getting Senator Joe Negron's bill, make it happen. And so what we're looking at now is a proposal to buy some land south of Lake Okeechobee that will allow the runoff from the main lake that will help relieve the estuaries to the east and west. And this runoff will be treated and taken care of and then dispersed into the Everglades to help replenish the Everglades, which is currently suffering from Everglades to help replenish the Everglades. I'm sorry. Which is I apologize for that. So what's happening is the water is now would percolate down and help replenish those areas. So what we've got now is a bill that has set a timetable for the action to be put into place. So if the Congress is not able to create a bill or put the bill through by the end of the year, there's a provision that says that it'll kick back to a Charlie Crist era agreement where a series of lands, more than what is proposed, would be bought. And it's actually not a good situation for either of the parties involved, being the Big Sugar and the water interest people. So that's what we're looking at there. But what I want to point out is that this was a big victory for Bull Sugar, Everglades Trust, the people in the Port St. Lucie area, the people also in the Fort Myers, Naples area. And if you're not familiar with this, what had been happening was there were discharges from Lake Okeechobee. Lake Okeechobee being basically a basin now that is surrounded by a series of dams, and it's more or less an agricultural reservoir. The management of the lake has been, we're not entirely happy with the way the waters have been managed. With a lot of the pollution that's happening, a lot of it from Big Sugar, which happens along the shores of the lake, you're getting these algae blooms that are now going out through the estuaries and into the coastal communities out there. So if you're not up to speed with this, bringing the water south of the lake will help relieve those discharges and also help bring that water into the Everglades, which, because of those dams and because of all the construction that has been done, is now being starved of the water. And we'll talk about some of the ways that affects what's going on, especially Florida Bay, which is sort of the end result of all of this water stuff. So before I move on, I just want to point out that I've got all these articles here for you to look at here in this link. And I just want to point out there's a 2010 Tampa Bay Times article here. U.S. sugar land is a good deal for Florida. And this is almost 7 years old now. So give it a read, and it shows you sort of the timeline that we're on to get to where we are now. So let me take a moment to look at my comments here. So, see, I'm sorry, Laura, if you got the Facebook freeze. Thank you, Landon, for tuning in. And so I'll go ahead and move on here. So around Florida. So let me get down to what I normally do, and that's talking about all of the various issues that Florida is facing. One of the big issues we have, especially in the urban part of our state, is sewage. So what I've got here on my links here is a series of sewage issues. So we have Titusville break leaks 14,000 gallons of sewage into the Indian River Lagoon. Next is the Department of Environmental Protection. Sewage bleach spills reported Saturday in Martin County. So Martin County got spills. Next one is neighbors worry about health risks from Golden Corral sewage. So a major restaurant chain was dumping their sewage inadvertently. They didn't necessarily realize, but let's go ahead and open up the the article here. So a well-known restaurant remains closed after an inspector discovered sewage had been leaking into a nearby canal. So, their sewage is leaking into a canal there. Over 8,000 gallon sewage spill traced to lift station malfunction. And this particular one is in Panama City. Over 22,000 gallons of raw sewage spilled in Manatee. So Manatee County, they've got sewage spill. Overflowing sewage wreaking havoc on Lake Worth apartment complex. So Lake Worth, they're having issues. Florida Emergency Management releases report on sewage spill. This particular one comes from Titusville. Health officials confirm wastewater contamination in Suwannee with Lake Okeechobee rivers. And so this is this is based out of Live Oak, but up in North Florida. So what I want you to get out of all of these, and these are all individual issues, is that urbanizing this state has a cost. And so, yes, we want to live here, and we need to be able to sustain human living. I'm not against people being here. We want to be able to appreciate this wonderful state. But that being said, in order to appreciate this wonderful state, we need to be a little bit better with our infrastructure and making sure that these spills and these issues are not coming up. And so they are going to happen from time to time. Yes, there is that standard deviation. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing now is still unacceptable. And I'm going to talk a little bit later, actually, at the end of the current events about some infrastructural projects that are undergoing. But when we talk about, a lot of people talk about the pipelines and how, they're bad. And there are some pipelines that are good, especially with sewage and things like that. And so what we want to be sure is that we're keeping our infrastructure up to date, that we're employing enough people to oversee the infrastructure, and that we have the appropriate plans in order. So the reduction of government, the reduction of oversight is not the way to get to that point. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick look here at the comments here. Hey, Kenny, good to see you, buddy. We've got some Wisconsin here. Very good. All right, so let me continue. And so we've covered the sewage. So the Indian River Lagoon pollution. I've got a couple of articles here talking about the tracking of the polluters of the Indian River Lagoon and Miracle Grow. So I'm going to take a quick look at these articles and kind of just give you the lead here. So this week, in a presentation Wednesday night in front of several dozen Treasure Coast residents in Fort Pierce, Orca CEO Dr. Edie Witter revealed the findings from a year's worth of data collected from Kilroy's in the lagoon. So they did some studies here, and what the tracking of the pollution is, it's not like there's a smoking gun. We're all contributing to this. So go ahead and read this article, and basically it is an article of we have to be accountable for ourselves. So, we all do things in our lives that have an effect on our environment, be it, affecting it through environmental toxins like pollutants or, actual things, insecticides, pesticides, things like that. So read about that. And then on that same topic, we've got another article here. So Orca, again, the same institution, no silver bullet for source of Indian River Lagoon pollution. So this basically goes on to talk a little bit more about what they were presenting. And it says here that the Fort Pierce-based Marine Research Group presented its findings from several years of research in and around the lagoon, including a study paid for by Scott's Miracle Grow. So it is what we see here, it's spreading the blame around, but I really wanted to point that out, the Miracle Grow part. Much like Big Sugar, much like many others, we're finding an infiltration of corporate interests into our studies. So it was easy to fall into what we saw earlier, and that is the data tracking that I presented. But then when we see that Miracle Grow is involved, I don't think I hope they are not the direct contributors of pollution, but there is a vested interest in presenting pollution as not a fault of the nitrate industry or the phosphate industry, or those people who are providing a little more than agriculture really needs. So I'm going to move on here to red tide. So we've got some cases of red tide here on the west coast. So nanoplankton red tide found in St. Petersburg waterways. And this was this started last Friday. So they collected some samples and they had it. And then Bradenton Herald on January 23rd, so that was Monday, so that was Monday, and so they were dealing with that as well. So we've got that happening on our west coast, and I'm going to be a little more brief this time as I go through the show, because last time I was over an hour, and I want to try to be a little more succinct. So in that spirit, I'm going to take a look at the comments here, make sure there's nothing going on, okay? Okay, so moving on, algae blooms. So again, that Orca group, I have another report from them. And this one is ammonia like a Big Mac for algae blooms in Lagoon, St. Lucie River. So what we're dealing with here is, when we talk about algae blooms, we're talking about nitrates and nitrites. And specifically, in this case, what we're talking about is ammonia, which is a nitrogen, which is nitrate. So what it is this, let me quote what's going on here. So they're cryptic because you don't see the green ooze like you did in the blooms last summer, she said, but the toxins are there. And it's scary because the water is being used to irrigate crops, not just here on the Treasure Coast, but I expect throughout the state. So the ammonia is basically feeding into this system. And this is happening in Indian River Lagoon, and this is coming from fertilizers. So it says here in the article, many fertilizers have started using a synthetic form of urea, a chemically natural found in urine, as a source of nitrogen because it's cheap and easy to store. Urea supplied to the soil quickly converts to ammonia through the action of a naturally occurring soil enzyme, said Yvette Goodiel, interim director at the Martin County Cooperative Extension Service. So I apologize for actually not delivering all of that information in the most concise manner, but hopefully you fit that together. So we've got this fertilizer that they're using. The fertilizer converts to ammonia. Ammonia is very water soluble, easily flushed into the water systems, and once the ammonia is in the water systems, it becomes a source of nitrate, which the algae will bloom and other undesirable plant and other types of flora of growth in our waterways. So the next item I have here in the algae bloom section is, well, let me see. Give me a second here. And so Port St. Lucie Park still closed because of blue-green algae in the lake. So I talked about this last week, in fact, and so this is basically an update. OL Peacock Senior Park remains closed because of blue-green algae found in the park's 100-acre lake. A lab in Davie hired by the city found microcystis, a type of blue-green algae that often is toxic in the lake. So this article is here for you to read if that is of interest to you. And the next section I want to go over here is the water toxin rule. So there's been some discussion of late about the amount of toxins that can be allowed in our waters. And this is not a new thing, and it's really kind of frustrating because really we don't want any toxins. But they've actually been looking into allowing more than we already permit. So this first article that I have listed here, environmentalists reject the Florida's water toxins rule. So what I'm talking about is the rule that allowed, if I recall correctly, 22 more allowable chemicals into our water systems than we had before. And there's absolutely no reason for us to be letting off on our water quality regulations. So the next article I have here says, environmental leader says Hillsborough should be more forthcoming about new industrial wastewater rules. So this is actually a pretty good article here. The leader of a local conservation group wants Hillsborough County to become more transparent when making decisions that could affect the environment. So this comes from the Tampa Bay Sierra Club. They're pushing for it. And so what we've got here is that, business should not trump environment in this state. And a lot of people are becoming more and more aware of this. And, it's been sneaking up on us, but it's good to see that people their eyes are open. All right, so SB 10, yes. So, Kenny, thanks for bringing that back up. I'm going to jump back to the beginning, to SB 10, and talk about it a little bit more. So, first of all, I want to show you all the shirt I'm wearing. You've seen me wear it before. The last time, though, it was backwards because I was using the front-facing camera. But what we've got is, there we go. We've got Florida standing in solidarity. And I want to make sure that everybody signs the Now or Neverglades petition. So we're early on in this broadcast, and I'll continue to mention this. But the Now or Neverglades petition is something we have to continue pushing on. So at the bottom of my links, there is a link to it. Please sign it when you get a chance. All right, so I'm going to get back to where I was at, so the water toxin bit. I finished that. But what could be related is the Dolphin Die-Off. So I've got these links here, or just one particular link. So scientists tackle mystery of mass dolphin stranding near Everglades Park. So the dolphins stranded off the western edge of Everglades National Park a week ago show some of the same symptoms as the pilot whales that came ashore at nearly the same spot 3 years ago, federal scientists said. In both cases, the animals were emaciated and had empty stomachs and intestines, but it was unclear whether they had stopped eating before or after they left their normal home range in the deeper waters. So it's unclear what happened with them. Go ahead and read this article if you'd like to know more, but I wanted to follow up on that. Next topic I'm going to tackle here, just very briefly, is radical climate change. Some of you all know it as global warming. There's many other ways of saying it. I like to say radical climate change because it pretty much describes what we're seeing. The first study here, the first report, sea level rise could have water lapping at Tampa's edges in 2040, study says. So if you open that up, you can read what that says. But that's consistent with what we hear out of southeast Florida, southwest Florida, many other parts. And so Florida inherently is a frontline victim of global warming, of radical climate change. And the fact that our government has chosen to completely ignore the fact that it exists and even prohibits members of government from talking about it, we've got a really interesting state of affairs here. So moving on, after I editorialized there, Sea Level Rise Symposium provides insight into island residents. So this is for Captiva and Sanibel Islands. So like I said, Southwest Florida is also dealing with these issues. Now the next issue I'm stepping into here is the Department of Environmental Protection here in Florida. So at the beginning of the week, Secretary John Steverson resigned after 2 stormy years in tenure. And this guy, it was an interesting run with him. And go ahead and read what it says here. But he certainly, it says here, let me go ahead and read just a little bit for you. So his 2-page resignation letter makes no mention of the sinkhole, nor of Steverson's or other controversies, including his call to allow hunting and other money-making activities at state parks, his replacement of experienced people with inexperienced ones, and his push for new water quality standards that allowed a larger amount of cancer-causing chemicals to be dumped in the state waterways. So, what I was talking about earlier about the reduction of limitations of what can be put in our waters, this guy was one of the chief contributors to that. So we booted him out. I can't say we. I didn't do anything to help it, but the state booted him out. And now Rick Scott is going to replace him with somebody else that's probably very much like him. But what I want to be sure of is that we keep our eyes on this. So the rest of the links I have here, save for one at the end, all discuss sort of the timeline this week of how we have come along that path. So the last one there says the Department of Environmental Protection Secretary departure sets rumor spinning. Rick Scott has this guy called Ryan Matthews now in power. Matthews joined the DEP in 2015, serving as the Director of Water Policy, and most recently serving as the Deputy Secretary of Regulation Programs. Before joining the state agency, he was an associate legislative affairs director at the Florida League of Cities. So it should be interesting to see Ryan Matthews and what he does in the interim as they move on to the next part of finding somebody permanent. This last guy was pretty bad, but you never want to set the bar too low now, do you? Let me go ahead and take a look at what we've got here. Hey, Steve, good to see you, my man. All right, so back to what we're at now. Richard Cochran, House won't okay legal money for DEP. So this is an interesting story. House Speaker Richard Cochran late Monday said his chamber won't agree to hand over any more money for the DEP to pay its legal bills until the agency gives a full accounting of what's already been spent. So there's $13 million. So Cochran was reacting to the DEP's request for an additional $13 million to pay outside legal counsel in the water wars, which I'm actually going to talk about in a little bit here. So go ahead and read through here. It's basically a continuation of what we've seen as far as state and ultimately federal government tight pursing the DEP and preventing them from doing the things that they need to do. And so the segue here is, my next section is the water wars. So this first article I have here is that the water wars could cost the state another $13 million. And so that is still in discussion. And I implore you all to pay attention to this. So, in paying attention to that, the DEP, based on that pressure that was put on by the government, has withdrawn their request. So it says here that we remain committed to being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. The state of Florida has been fighting for nearly 2 decades to protect its historic flows of the Apalachicola River, and we will continue to protect Florida from the environmental and economic harms caused by Georgia's overconsumption of water. So this is all sort of a culmination of DEP, John Stevenson's resignation, and there's a lot of things that are going on here. And so we'll see where this goes, because this water war thing is not over. So every week, in fact, this is my 6th week of doing this, and every week I have done this live feed. I have talked about those water wars, and so they'll continue. Hopefully you'll continue to watch me and follow them. So let me take a moment here to see what's going on. Hey, Troy, great to see you. Yeah, man, I like the shirt too. I hope to see a lot of people wearing these in the future. So next thing up is the Southwest Florida groups. So John Cassani was named the Caloosahatchee Waterkeeper. So I announced a few weeks ago when John Quarterman was announced the Suwannee Riverkeeper. Well, I'm doing the same now for the Caloosahatchee. Interestingly enough, I applied for this position several months ago, and it went through, I guess, a couple of phases of hiring. And so this individual is, he's a scientist, and so I'm encouraged by his background. I'm told that he's, a bit on the dry side and not quite a public speaker like what we see with the great Marty Baum and the people that we love like that. So I'm ready to put my support behind him, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, and hopefully his community outreach will be as effective as his scientific knowledge. So congratulations, John Cassani. We look forward to seeing all the great stuff that you're going to do for Southwest Florida. And also I want to mention here, a new group fighting to keep Lee County waterways clean. So the Caloosa Waterkeeper Alliance, this is, like they're calling it, a new group, and this is what John Cassani is a part of. So they're sort of rebranding themselves a little bit, but here we are. So here's another article that discusses those events there. And so if you're in Southwest Florida, go out, give them your support, and not only their support, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but John Heim with the Southwest Florida Clean Water Movement is also still protesting and demanding water tests. So you want to also support him in that movement as well. So let me check here. All right, continuing on. So dredging. So we've got some dredging going on. Every week I talk about the various dredging projects. So Port Everglades, there's an environmental review going on here. So I've got this article posted here. And in fact, so the first article I have actually says, okay, maybe it will be delayed. The second article I posted says, actually, it is delayed. So there's an environmental impact study being done about the dredging of the canals. And we don't really want this. We don't really need to bring bigger ships into our ports. Florida, every time I talk to people about, what effect imports have on our state, or what effect exports have, it's not that big of an industry for us. And I feel like there are a lot of industries that are trying to expand Florida as a point of export or a point of import. And really, given the fragile nature of our state, the fragile nature of our ecosystem, we're just not a good spot for that. So I personally am resistant to the idea of using Florida as a major port for industry. Now, outside of that, we have Siesta Key Association files lawsuit against Big Pass Dredging. So what this is all about here is, and I talked about this last week. This is more of this is for Lido Key Beach and the eroding of the beach, and sort of a beach management issue. And so, what I guess I want to show in these juxtapositions of stories is that dredging has a bunch of different purposes. And in some cases, it could be good with beach restoration or beach maintenance. In some cases, it could be bad, as in the widening and deepening of channels for unnecessary reasons. So hopefully, you'll get to read these two. The next thing up is mining. And these are mostly about these are all about Mosaic. So you'll see these 4 articles: Mosaic's record and pulp looms over efforts to expand phosphate mining in Manatee. So what we've got going on here is, this is Mosaic. This is, if you've all seen that video of the huge sinkhole where all the glycophosphate was descending into the aquifer. This happened last September. This is the same company. This is the same industry. This is the same thing, same area of the state. They want to expand their operations still in the sinkhole-prone area. And most people are against it, it seems, but there are some people for it. And so the third article I have listed here, Bradenton Herald, neighbors give thumbs up to Mosaic Wingate mine expansion. If I'm going to pull this up real quick, just because it's important to see what the other side is saying. So what I want to say is, so here's the thing. So the 4th generation Manatee County farmer, who is also president of the Manatee County Farm Bureau, said, "Anyone who argues against phosphate mining is also arguing against farmers, the jobs we create, and the abundant, affordable food we produce with the necessity of fertilizer." Interesting point. I'm not sure about the jobs they create, as farming nowadays is mostly mechanized. So, but it's interesting to see the other side. Obviously, phosphates are a necessary industrial product, and they are going to be mined, but the expansion of mining, we need to be a lot more conscientious about what we're doing, and given the current climate of business and the current climate of industry, it's really easy to be distrustful and not believe that they're going to mine these natural resources with the public, the greater good in mind. So it's easy to be skeptical, and we should be skeptical. So you've got those 4 articles here that I've listed to look at. Now, on to infrastructure. This first article I have is Bill Nelson, Democrats unveiled their $1 trillion infrastructure plan. And so that included in that plan is Everglades restoration. And that's really why I bring that up. Not only the Everglades restoration, but also it says here, it also includes $10 billion to modernize ports and waterways, which could be used to speed up repairs being made to the Herbert Hoover dike needed for Everglades restoration, and deepen the seaports in Jacksonville and Fort Lauderdale to accommodate the new megaships coming through the expanded Panama Canal, and $210 billion to fix crumbling roads and bridges. So the first part of that sounded great. The second part of that, alluding to what I said earlier, well, maybe not. So, interestingly, though, this article sort of gives hint to what is going on. So, with the expansion of the Panama Canal, they're expecting us to ship more stuff to Asia from here. That's the logical conclusion for that. And if I may take a moment, that is one of our biggest fears with the Sable Trail pipeline and these other hydrocarbon pipelines coming through here, is that the sole intent is to ship them out of the country and not for our domestic use. So given that there's a high risk of what can happen with these pipelines, given they rupture, they explode, or spill in the case of liquid, we're left holding the bag and we have nothing to gain from it. So it's becoming more and more obvious that our government intends to ship these hydrocarbons out. And so I just want to bring that up to point here before I move on. Let me take a look at the comments and see if anybody has. Yep, Troy, I'm out of here. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for watching, my man. So let me move on here. So utilities. So this is an interesting story. Wedgefield residents here in Orange County seeking grants for Flores water plant. Okay, so their concern here are TTHMs. Those are trihalomethanes, which are a group of 4 chemicals that are formed along with other disinfection products within chlorine and other disinfectants used to control microbial contaminants in drinking water, react with naturally occurring organic and inorganic matter in water. So basically, this is something that was involved with Flint as well. And so I just wanted to bring this up quickly to show you that these are, this can be a local issue as well. And so I've got some links here. There's that link, and then there's Wedgefield water takeover can cost lots of time, money. That kind of shows the other side of the coin if you want to read those. There's another one here about a water warning in the shores. This is up in Ocala. And the Marion County Utilities on Tuesday, they issued a warning about the water up there. And then here in Orange County again, or at least close to, in the city of Apopka, near Lake Apopka, there was some mishandling of a fertilizer discharge behind a wastewater treatment plant. And I think I touched on this last week. And again, I touch on these type of stories just to let everybody know that these things are happening. And this isn't a concise list of all the things that are going on. These things are happening all over the state. I only have a short amount of time here to work with, and I talked ad nauseum last week, so I'm trying to keep it shorter this week. But these things are definitely happening in our community. Closed beaches. I only grabbed one this week, but there were several that actually popped up on my news feed this week. But Health Department recommends no swimming at 2 Hillsborough County beaches. So in this one, what we've got here is a health advisory has been issued for E.G. Simmons Park in Ruskin and Davis Island beaches in Tampa Bay, based on water samples. So again, like we have wonderful waters, but we don't. We've got to be a little bit better about how clean we keep our water. So people come to the state for our water, and we live in the state for our water. So I may be preaching to the choir, but hopefully you all, appreciate it the same way I do. So I want to talk really quick about a fertilizer ordinance. So Hernando County fertilizer ordinance in effect from January 1st to March 31st. And this is an interesting little bit. Let me read for you quickly what it says here. So, did you know that Hernando County has a fertilizer ordinance? This is an attempt to mitigate the amount of nitrates entering our waterways. The Weeki-Wachee River extends its total maximum daily load, TMLD, of nitrates. This means that it takes in more nitrates than it can process and dispose of. This results in excessive algae growth. Too much algae can lead to a lack of photosynthesis for the underwater plants. As these plants die, they absorb oxygen, creating a lower count of dissolved oxygen in the water, potentially leading to fish kill. We saw this occur in the Indian River Lagoon this past May. So, what we've got here is a model on how to mitigate pollutants in our waterways. So Hernando County said, for these months, you cannot use nitrates. And we're going to see how well it works. It says here that it doesn't actually say anything here about results. So this is sort of a plan in action. But they recommend all sorts of things. So read what goes on here and find out for yourself. And maybe in your area, you may want to think about proposing something like that. In fact, I'm thinking maybe here in Orange County, that would be a great thing, especially given how, this is a very urbanized county. A lot of yards are here. But I imagine the HOAs and some of those other agencies may push back against it. So let's see where we can go with that. Okay, so Troy Brown tells me that Juno Beach was closed to swimming. That trailing on to what I was saying before, that is something, that we should be aware of, that this is happening all over the place. And let's see, Troy Brown also says that some say the secretary of the DEP resigned over the mosaic issue. Don't know if that's true. That's interesting, and that's something to look into and maybe pay attention to. It would not surprise me. Would not surprise me at all. So, next thing up is the nuclear waste storage. So, we talked about this last week, how Turkey plant, it is the Turkey Point plant, where they want to inject the nuclear waste 3,000 feet underground in the boulder zone. So, and we talked about the issues that causes. So now there is a lawsuit, and it could derail the plan. So we want to keep track of that. So I have an article here if you want to click on that and read what's going on. We want to keep our minds on that. Now, going all the way to the other end of the state, officials give update on paper mill explosion. And actually, I have been following this over the week. This is up in Pensacola. And so the headline is, it's scary because it's out there. Officials give update on paper mill explosion. So nearly 2 full days after an explosion occurred at International Paper's Mill at Cantamount, Florida, near Pensacola, officials from International Paper, local, state, and federal agencies held a press conference to give updates on what was going on. And so it's going to take some time, said Chris Russell, federal on-the-scene coordinator with the United States Environmental Protection Agency. We have about 100 staff out there in the field doing assessments to remediate impacted areas. So there was a manufacturing process failure, according to the spokesman, and a significant structural damage to the largest pulp digester as well as the powerhouse. Paper used to be a big industry in Florida, but has waned over the years. And I have sort of a love-hate relationship with the paper industry because the lumber industry in general is a renewable industry that is sustainable through proper practices. But we have to be sure that we're doing it correctly and that we're reclaiming that paper as well for recycling and such. And so news like this does not encourage me and doesn't give me a lot of firepower to support paper and the lumber industry. So hopefully they can get their acts sorted out with this because, this is not the type of thing that we want to see. Hey, Tiffany, Pensacola in the house. They're pressure washing houses and sucking up the water and transporting it somewhere else. Okay, so do you feel like what they're doing is sufficient for what the issue is? I mean, was it industrial waste that was sprayed everywhere, or what do you think is going on there? And I'll give you a moment to respond. I'm going to go to one last thing here. And I'm just going to cover it quickly. So the Florida pipelines. I have one article here from the mainstream media. Florida protesters demonstrate against proposed pipeline ending in Florida. And so I don't have a lot to report today as far as the pipeline is concerned, as things have been moving along pretty steadily. But I will report that today, Ronald Reedy is opening up Crystal Water Camp. It's actually near Narcoossee, closer to Narcoossee than St. Cloud, but it is actually listed in St. Cloud. And this is going to be a training camp, a camp of basically limited to 15 people at a time, where you will learn how to go and view, document, and report the different violations for various water issues. So if you're interested in that, please contact me or Ronald Reedy, and I'll get you in touch with the appropriate people. Again, that's Crystal Water Camp, and that's in Osceola County. So let's see. All right, well, I didn't get an answer to my question just yet, so let me move on to upcoming events. Okay, so tomorrow's a big day. I've got a bunch of events for tomorrow. The biggest is the Walk for Water and Speak for the Springs up in Denellen. And I'm going to try to be there, but I can't promise that I will. But let me give you the details in case I'm not there to join you. Join us for Walk for Water and Speak for the Springs on January 28, 2017. We will walk 2 miles through Denellen, bringing awareness to the pipeline, and we will end at City Hall Park, where we will have a number of speakers on the topics ranging from our springs to the liquid natural gas stations and more. We will be meeting at the southeast corner of the Walmart parking lot at 10:30 a.m., address 11021 North William Street, Denellen, 34432, and we will walk together at 11 a.m. to City Hall Park, where the speakers will begin at 12. Okay, so that's a big event. And if you're in the North Florida area or you're within driving distance, I strongly suggest that you try to make it to that. The next one I've got here is Paddle the Lake, and this is in St. Petersburg, Florida, Boyd Hill Nature Park, 1101 Country Club Way South, St. Petersburg, 33705. Guided paddle takes visitors along the edge of the preserve, see the preserve from a new perspective. There is a cost, $16 per person, but if you're interested in that, that could be pretty cool to do. The next one is the Space Coast Solar Co-op info session. So the details on this is live in Space Coast and want to go solar? Now's your chance. Neighbors across the greater Space Coast area, from Titusville to Melbourne, have formed a co-op with the help of Florida Sun to make it easier to save money on the purchase of solar panels while building a community of local solar supporters. Join us for an information session at the Ted Moorhead Lagoon House in Palm Bay to learn about solar energy, as well as how the Space Coast Solar Co-op simplifies the process of going solar while providing a discount through its bulk purchasing power. So if you're not here in the Central Florida area where we have a Solar City, you may want to look into this if you're over in Brevard County or that area as well. Let me double check here. So Tiffany Miller, black liquor is a substance they used to dissolve. Yes. So and also methyl mercaptan is a result of that process. There's a sulfate and sulfite pulping process that I learned about when I was an undergrad, and I will be happy to get this information out. So you're correct, Tiffany. There is a chemical that's used in one of the processes that is extremely caustic, and it is a big problem in our waterways. In fact, as I digress here for a moment, at one point, the state of Florida had what was called Class 5 waterways, which were waterways that permitted complete industrial waste. They have been eliminated from the schedule for quite a while now. But a lot of the things that I'm seeing, these proposals, seem to be going back in that direction, where we would have waterways that are completely eroded of any sort of ability to support life. So thank you for bringing me up to speed with that, Tiffany. I appreciate that. People Not Pipelines is my next event. So this is in Gainesville. The details, and this is on, again, tomorrow. Everything I'm talking about right now is tomorrow. We only get one planet, so we have to get this right. Come out and join us as we fight for environmental justice and economic justice. Stand against the DAPL, the Keystone, and the Sable. Environmental justice goes hand in hand with economic and racial justice. Now is the time to set that tone, and we will not ignore the planet and condemn the future generations. So if this is something you're interested in and you're in Gainesville or the North Florida area, go ahead, click, and check it out. Okay, and then the last one for tomorrow is the annual meeting and elections of the Miami Climate Alliance. So if you're in South Florida, Southeast Florida, This may be something you want to check out. It's at the Miami-Dade College Wolfson campus, and that's at 300 Northeast 2nd Avenue, Miami, 33132. The details are, join us for our annual agenda-setting meeting where we elect our new steering committee, term for 2 years, and set strategic priorities for the coming year. We'd love to have you with us. As we gear up for the age of Trump, we're more motivated than ever to make the Miami Climate Alliance a powerful force for the community resilience in South Florida and beyond. We want you to stand up with us. So this is the type of stuff that gets me excited, you know, the local grassroots movements where people are coming together and resisting the forces of the higher tiers of government. And I talk a lot about how, you know, D.C. and Tallahassee is a long way from where we are. And so we have some buffer room in which to work. And so I like what I see here. If you're in Miami or the South Florida, Southeast Florida area, please go check them out. Now, on the 29th, so this is Sunday, one thing I've got here is this actually isn't water related, but this was brought to my attention by Rob Greenfield, the documentarian, that here in Orlando, 3201 Corrine Drive, 32803, the Fleet Audubon Park Swarm Ride with 1% and for the Planet. Kind of an awkward title, but the details are it's a free community event that invites you to bike and farm with them in the Audubon Park community. So basically, this is a local farming type of thing that I'm always in favor of and always want to promote. So the link is here if you want to check that out. Okay, so further ahead, more than a week from now, there's a couple of things I want to make sure I mention, and I'll mention a couple of times. Excuse me. The Florida Clean Water Movement and the Fort Myers Beach Shrimp Parade. So this is being held by John Heim and a few others, and this is March 4th through 5th, Fort Myers Beach. The details are, save our local community waterways from the ecological disaster known as Lake O discharges. And I'll let you read the rest of it, but there's quite a bit here. We need to get some support for Southwest Florida, and I'm behind them, and hopefully you can get behind them too. So March 4th, they're going to have a demonstration. Be there if you can be. Okay, let me see, and all right, moving on. Okay, now we're in Everglades Sport Fishing Day. This is April 11th, up in Tallahassee, Florida, the state capital. This was brought to my attention just recently by my friend and trusted and esteemed colleague, Dave Preston. And so this is something to look forward to. Let me give you the details on it. So on that day, hundreds of us will gather in Tallahassee to make our collective voices heard. Together we will meet with the legislatures from our districts and all parts of Florida. We need to get our words out. So this will be captains for fishing guides. This will be anglers. Anybody who has a vested interest in our waters needs to be there. So if you make money from clean water, this is something that affects you directly. So I implore you to get involved. You're a fishing guide, you're a boat guide, you do anything that involves our most precious resource. Please be involved with this. So again, I'm projecting well into the future. This is April 11th, but it's a Tuesday, but I want to bring it to your attention now. Okay, so moving on, let me take a look at, there's no real comments here. Everybody close your big bank accounts and either open up a community bank or credit union account. So Daniel, I appreciate you bringing that up real quick. Before I move on, I will say that if you have not divested from one of the big banks, and really, I could list the banks here, but really, if you're in any big bank, you're probably involved with your money being in an industry that you're not in favor of. So, credit unions usually have better interest rates, usually have ownership, so you actually are a part of the credit union. The fringe benefits of being part of a credit union or even a local bank are beyond what you get from a federal or national bank. So I implore you to take your money out and bring it closer to your community. Okay, so moving on here, I've got some videos here from what I saw this week up on Tallahassee, getting Senate Bill 10 passed. So great work, everybody who was involved with that. And then closing up here, other announcements. Sign the Now or Never Everglades petition. I say it all the time, and I'll continue to say it. Sign it. If you haven't signed it, sign it. If you know somebody who hasn't signed it, get them to sign it. There is no shortage of signage for this petition. So please sign that damn petition. Share it. Get your family and friends involved. Thank you for doing that. So, last thing I want to talk about here before I acknowledge all the people who've done great things in the state today. There are some organizations out there who are looking to undermine what we're doing. And I recently saw, under the guise of Floridians for Clean Water, Stand Up North Florida had a sponsored post on Facebook. Now, to give you a little background, Stand Up North Florida is basically a sham for Big Sugar. And what they're trying to do is to get North and South Florida to fight over the money that is allocated to the state to address our water issues every year. And it is just a bad deal all around. One of the representatives of the main guy actually got booted out, yelled out of a city commission meeting in Pensacola. Interestingly, Pensacola is a very conservative area, and his message would normally be heard with welcoming ears. But this guy is absurd, and what they're pushing is absurd. So what I have here is a couple of links. Actually, I've got 3 links. That kind of one link is to what they're doing, and then these other 2 links are the argument for them. And I want you to read these because it's important to understand how the spin works, how the subterfuge works. We're now in an age of gaslighting, where our government gaslights us on a daily basis. If you're not familiar with the term gaslighting, please look it up. Basically refers to an old film where a man makes his wife go crazy by feeding her mistruths and convincing her that they're real. And that's really what's happening to us right now. So go ahead and check those out. And also Lake Okeechobee Alliance. And really important. So, Stand Up North Florida, Floridians for Clean Water, Lake Okeechobee Alliance. Please do not like these pages. Do not do anything positive for them. Bookmark them. Check them periodically so you know what they're up to. But please do not like those pages. I spent all night last night getting in touch with a bunch of people who are water warriors, people exactly like me, who errantly like the page or endorse the page. And that would just lead to other people misinformation, and it would mislead other people into liking it as well. So we don't want to do that. So I'm going to conclude here now that I've been on for almost an hour. I want to thank Bull Sugar and Everglades Trust for everything they've done to get Senate Bill 10 introduced. I think they all deserve a pat on the back. They worked really hard. We got a lot of people up in Tallahassee. We got some great people to talk. Dylan Hansen deserves a lot of credit for the work he's done with the videos he made, especially of the pastor talking about how he can't use the water to baptize his congregants anymore after 105 years of using that water. We have a lot of great people on our side. The pro-water movement, the Water is Life movement, we've got the good people. And we're only getting more. We're only growing. And so if you're with me and if you're with us, you're on the right side of history. I thank you for being here with us. And hopefully we will enlighten more people and get more people on this side as well. So this is Adam Dubbin, SafeWaterWatersNow.org, Florida Waters Weekly, signing out for this week. I hope you all have a great one. Catch me next week. Same time, same place.